All right. Hi, Paula. Is it Paula or Paula? What
Paula.
Paula? Hi,
Yeah,
Paula. Welcome to
yes.
the Animal Turn.
Thank you. Thanks, Claudia. When I was thinking about the sort of different materials and technologies that are also made invisible when just in the normalization of the kind of use of animals, um, the kind of, as we were saying, the violence that's done to them gets hidden behind these sort of euphemistic representations of their lives and what we do. Um, so I was saying that the you've got the literal invisibility and the discursive invisibility, but I think what underpins them is the epistemic invisibility and the ontological invisibility. But so just to confuse things, I think there's also like interweaving through those, because of course, like binary systems of inequality, um, they're of course hierarchical. There's different levels of inequality, and there's different sort of hierarchies of visibility as well. So some animal uses get accorded more moral concern than others. So particularly now, I would say in the advocacy space, animal agriculture is certainly quite prominent, and food animals get talked about in their sort of the billions that are killed each year, and the acute suffering. Animals that suffer very visibly and acutely physically are often very prominent. But what I would say are perhaps less visible, or should be just as morally visible but aren't, are other types of suffering, the like psychological and also ontological suffering again. Um, so, uh, so the suffering of animals that are kind of dislocated from kin or prevented from experiencing any kind of stability or community for their entire lives can be 15, 20, 30 years or longer, I think should be considered just as morally significant as those of animals that are produced and killed so much more quickly in their billions. But for the individual animals, um, the experience of physical, psychological, or ontological suffering is just as equal, and yet morally, I would say what's done to food animals receives more concern. Not that it's been having much effect, but I think there's a risk that in sort of not paying attention to these other forms of suffering, we're sort of saying that there are certain relations and uses of animals that can be benign and benevolent.
Hmm.
And so if we just made the way we treat food animals more like that, then use per se is not the problem.
Yes, I guess that's also underpins a lot of kind of welfare ways of thinking about animals. So I guess what you're saying here is there's a problem in kind of creating a poster child out of these relationships. So we're using our human relations with agricultural animals as a kind of poster child for trying to understand many of our problematic relationships with animals that need to be better visibilized, better made visible, and also understood, whether they be the ways in which we watch them, the ways in which we keep them in our homes. How do these relationships impact the animals physically and acutely, the way you mentioned, but also their sense of self, the sense to which they are able to actually navigate the world and be. How does this actually alter their worlds? And there are many ways in which this manifests, and I think eating them is one. But as you said right in the beginning, and here again, how they're kept in zoos, how they're kept in aquariums, how they are managed in homes, in laboratories, these are all spaces worthy of consideration.